Hello everyone, welcome to yet another session of the daily news analysis by SRIRAM'S IAS, where we take up the important articles featuring in the Hindu newspaper and break them down for our understanding from the UPSC examination point of view. Let's take up today's discussion by discussing the important articles from the newspaper. The articles that appear in the newspaper are on our screens, and let's take up the first important article. The first important article which appears in today's newspaper reads, "Why is Kerala protesting Supreme Court's ESZ or eco-sensitive zone notification?" Now this news and this issue has been running quite in the news, where the concept of eco-sensitive zone has gained much importance, and in the same backdrop the Supreme Court gave out an order. Now what was the Supreme Court's order regarding the eco-sensitive zone? What is an eco-sensitive zone? Why is Kerala protesting against this order? We'll look into all of this. So this topic becomes important for us from the GS3 point of view, wherein we study environment, and also the prelims perspective, wherein the concept of eco-sensitive zone has already been asked in the previous examination. So another form of the question can any day be asked for this. So let's look at the issue. First of all, when we talk about the eco-sensitive zone first, what exactly is an eco-sensitive zone? So an eco-sensitive zone is, this is another article which appears in the newspaper on the Kerala's move to what it intends to do with the protests. So about the eco-sensitive zone first. What exactly is an eco-sensitive zone? So eco-sensitive zone is nothing but a boundary area around the protected areas that we have in our country. What do you mean by protected areas? The wildlife sanctuaries, national parks, tiger reserves, all of these areas are collectively known as the protected areas of the country. So an additional layer of boundary in and around these protected areas, these layers of boundary are known as an eco-sensitive zone. This boundary region can extend up to 10 kilometers around the protected area, and this is kept to maintain a safe transition distance between the human habited areas and the protected area networks. So it is the delicate territory that lies within 10 kilometers of the protected areas such as national parks and wildlife sanctuaries, and one protected region to the next may have a different ESZ width and a regulation style. So is it necessary that all of the protected areas will have a 10-kilometer boundary line around themselves? That is not necessary. It can vary according to the geography as well as the regional variations in that particular thing. So if this is the protected area, an additional boundary around that protected area will be our eco-sensitive zone. Alright, this zone is there. Why is it kept? It's kept so that there is a safe distance between the human habited areas and the protected area. It functions as a shock absorber for the protected areas. And which is the ministry which notifies these areas? So the Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change declares an ESZ around the protected areas. And according to which act? Under which act are these eco-sensitive zones promulgated? So the act is Environment Protection Act. Now this is an important information because we can even confuse it to the Wildlife Protection Act, because the national parks or the other protected areas are notified under the Wildlife Protection Act, but the eco-sensitive zone areas are notified under the Environment Protection Act. So this difference we should remember. So alright, we understood that this is the concept of eco-sensitive zone, but what are some of the activities that are allowed and prohibited in the eco-sensitive zone? So first, looking at the activities prohibited around the eco-sensitive zone. Which are the activities which one cannot carry out? So which will be these activities? Those activities which will harm the ecosystem of the forest, those won't be allowed. So therefore mining, stone quarrying, crushing units, tourism activities like flying over the protected areas in an aircraft or hot air balloon, setting up industries that cause pollution, establishment of hydroelectric projects, commercial use of firewood, and solid waste disposal or wastewater disposal. All of these activities have the idea of somewhere damaging the ecosystem or tampering with the ecosystem. That is why these activities are prohibited. Then what are some of the activities which are allowed And why are there first of all activities which are allowed? Because certain activities can be carried out for the sustenance of the ecosystem as well. The communities which live around the forest, they can carry out certain activities which need not harm the forest. That is why certain activities are allowed. And what are those? Ongoing agriculture and horticulture practices by local communities. So they are allowed to carry on with their practices: rainwater harvesting, organic farming, adoption of green technology and use of renewable energy sources. All of these activities are allowed in the eco-sensitive zone. Alright, so we looked at the concept of eco-sensitive zone, who notifies them, what are the activities prohibited and allowed. Now let's come to the Supreme Court order which came. So in the month of June, last June 2022, Supreme Court directed that every protected forest, national park and animal sanctuary in the country must have a 1 kilometer eco-sensitive zone starting from its delimited boundary. So what did Supreme Court do? For those areas which did not existingly have the eco-sensitive zone, it mandated that every protected area must have at least 1 kilometer mandatory eco-sensitive zone area around the protected area network. Why was this done? Because the Supreme Court identified that a lot of man-animal conflict is occurring and a lot of activities get carried on which we saw in the prohibited section. These prohibited activities are carried out in and around the forest. So in order to protect these national parks and wildlife sanctuaries, Supreme Court gave out such an order, right? So it was done, as the judges said, mining and the other activities have been destroying the country's natural resources for years. So in order to achieve long-term sustainability with regard to natural resources, the state must also serve as a trustee for the benefit of general public, is what the Supreme Court observed. And the court decided that any existing buffer zone that is more than 1 kilometer, which we saw that according to the Environment Protection Act, the eco-sensitive zone can range around up to 10 kilometers. So whichever is more than 1 kilometer in any national park or protected forest will take precedence. So that particular eco-sensitive zone will stay its course. And until the law makes final judgment regarding the buffer zone's dimensions, the court's order to keep the 1 kilometer safety zone will be in effect. So this is how we also observe as to Supreme Court frames laws in a country, wherein whatever judgment comes, the judgment has to be enforced by the authorities. So up until other dimensions are fixed, the 1 kilometer eco-sensitive zone will stay as it is, right? And it will come into effect immediately. Alright, so after understanding Supreme Court's order, why is Kerala protesting to this Supreme Court order? What is the state with Kerala? So Kerala authorities feel that they have a strong motive towards objecting this move of mandatory eco-sensitive zone for all national parks. Why does it feel that this mandatory eco-sensitive zoning for all its national parks and wildlife sanctuaries is damaging to it? Is because 30% of Kerala is forested land. This is according to the Kerala authorities, what they're pitching. And Western Ghats, which occupy a major part of Kerala, occupy around 48% of the state, right? So this shows that much of the area of the state is occupied by the Western Ghats and forested lands, which would mean what? That the 3.5 crore population of the state has to live in limited areas, and that is why the population density of the state is around 900 people per square kilometer. The Kerala authorities are citing as the reason that they anyway have less area in the state to occupy and work with. With respect to this, they already have 23 protected areas in the state. So they are already protecting it, and so if mandatory again eco-sensitive zoning is happening for all of these areas, it would further diminish their area of the state. That is why farmers in Kerala are worried about losing their prospects for living in the affected areas, and a lot of communities live in the adjoining areas as well, and therefore support for the anti-ESZ demonstration has come from the Catholic Church, where even the church has come up and objected this notification, opposition parties and the state administration. And due to the extremely dense human settlement in these areas, farmers groups and political parties have demanded that all human settlements be exempted from the ESZ judgment. So as we can see that whatever the order was given by the Supreme Court, Kerala is objecting to it and it has its certain reasons. So as we saw in the second article talks about now what is the recourse ahead for Kerala with respect to this particular issue. So the state of Kerala is going to approach the Supreme Court, where it will either ask for a clarification petition or a modification petition. What does this mean? That it will either ask to exempt itself from this eco-sensitive zone notification or modify the notification for its state in its particular characteristic as to howsoever it wants. So it might do all of these things. So this was an issue which becomes important for us to study, and from the examination point of view, the concept of eco-sensitive zone becomes important for us, right? So with this, let's move on to our next article for the day. The next article which appears in the newspaper reads, only 50% of the farmers benefited from loan waivers, says study. Now this article brings in to highlight the concept of farm loan waiver, right, which we keep seeing in the news quite a lot, and the concept of farm loan waivers is used by either the central government or the state governments especially to ease the economic burden of the farmers, and we see that this is generally seen at the onset of elections. So this becomes important for us from the point of view of GS3, where we study the portion of economy. So the concept of farm loan waivers become relevant there, and it becomes important for us. So now, before looking into what the research report is saying, this is a research report prepared by the State Bank of India, which has analyzed the multiple farm loan waivers that have been granted around 9 states for the past 8 to 10 years, and how have they fared, how have the states and the farmers in those states have they received the benefit of these farm loan waivers, is what the study is analyzing. So before we get into that, let's first understand the concept of farm loan waiver. What does this mean? That whenever the farmers of the state or in and around the country, they have to indulge into their farmland activities, so they require money for it, and whenever they require extra money, they have to take loan for those activities. And if at all, after taking the loan, sowing the seeds and harvesting, if the harvest does not come out to be enough to pay the loan back, what will this do? It will keep mounting the debt for these farmers. So this is what generally keeps happening if the yield of these farmers is not favorable. So this keeps mounting the debt for the farmers, which will again result into what? It will hamper their sowing season, which is to come after their previous harvest season. So in order to save the farmers from this debt trap and to increase their income or to ease their burden, the state government or central governments bring out a scheme known as the waiving off, or what we can say is that exempting their loans, whatever loans they have taken, the amount of that loan they would not have to pay back, which they would have to initially. This particular concept is known as the waiving of the farm loans or farm loan waiver, right? So after understanding this, so in the past 8 to 10 years, a lot of these farm loan waivers have been granted across many states in the country. So this SBI research report analyzes the effect of these farm loan waivers. So it is based on the outcome of 10 farm loan write-offs worth about 2.53 lakh crore. This gives us an idea of the cumulative amount of the loan exempted or the loan waived by the state and central governments up until now, which amounts to 2.53 lakh crores. Announced by 9 states, starting with Andhra Pradesh and Telangana in 2014. So the report analyzes these loan waivers from the year 2014 for 9 states. So what does it say? As of March 2022, the poorest implementation of farm loan waiver schemes in terms of proportion of eligible farmers who had received the announced benefits was in Telangana. So which means that only 5% of the farmers of Telangana could get the benefits of farm loan waivers. For Madhya Pradesh, only 12%. For Jharkhand, only 13%, and Punjab 24%, Karnataka 38%, and Uttar Pradesh 52%. These are those states which are showing dismal performance in the receiving the benefits of the farm loan waivers, wherein even less than we can say for these states less than 30% farmers are able to benefit from these farm loan waivers. And those states which have done well, so Chhattisgarh has shown 100% utilization of the farm loan waiver, and Maharashtra has also come out as a good performer at 92%. So cumulatively this shows that since 2014, out of approximately 3.7 crore eligible farmers, only around 50% of the farmers received the amount of loan waiver till March 2022. What does this highlight? The gist of this report basically highlights that the intended benefit of the farm loan waiver, which was to accrue to these farmers, it is not translating fully to them, and we can see the disparity in the states, and cumulatively only around 50% farmers are receiving this benefit. This highlights the poor performance of the farm loan waiver, right? So what are the reasons that the report identified? The report identified rejection of farmers' claims, because whenever the scheme is announced, there would be a procedure for the farmer to follow, and then the farm loan will be waived off. So rejection of these claims on some or the other grounds by state governments, limited or low fiscal space to meet promises. Now this shows that the state government can promise farm loan waiver, but it also has to have the required strength, economic strength, to take care of this farm loan waiver. That was not, the report identifies that the low fiscal space of the state governments is also a reason responsible for the not able for the benefit to be not able to transferred. And change in governments, the governments keep changing and the schemes keep getting modified, which is also a reason the report cites as possible failure or inadequate completion of these farm loan waiver schemes. So in this backdrop, can we look at some other drawbacks of the farm loan waiver schemes as well? What are some of the other backdrops? Firstly, it covers only a tiny fraction of farmers, right? This report also highlights the same thing, that how very less number of farmers actually get the benefit and actually come under the purview of this scheme. The loan waiver as a concept excludes most of the farm households in dire need of relief and includes some who do not deserve such relief on economic grounds. So this also becomes a reason that since there is a procedure to be followed, the benefit mostly goes on to those people who do not need the loan waiver, and those marginal farmers who actually needed the benefit does not go to them. And second, it provides only a partial relief to the indebted farmers, as about half of the institutional borrowing of a cultivator is for non-farm purposes. This also highlights one of the drawback, where most of the expenditure that the farmer does significantly is on the non-farm purposes, and this loan waiver is for farm activities, which is why we call it the farm loan waiver. So the non-farm activities are also there, to which this loan waiver does not cater to. Third, one household has multiple loans, either from different sources or in the name of different family members, which entitles it to multiple loan waiving. So this also becomes an issue. Fourth, loan waiving excludes agricultural laborers who are even weaker than the cultivators in bearing the consequence of the economic distress, again showcasing how the intended beneficiary is not being able to targeted by the loan waiver scheme. Fifth, it is severely eroding the credit culture with dire long-term consequences to the banking businesses. Now this is something which even the research highlights, that by just promising, the intended benefit does not accrue. The state also has to have the capacity to repay these loans or take the burden of waiving of these loans. Secondly, if the farmers get this perception that once we take loan and once at the onset of election these loans can be waived off, will this not disrupt or hamper the credit culture of the state, wherein this would make the farmers just take up loans and wait for the loans to be waived off? So it destroys the credit culture. And sixth, the scheme is prone to serious exclusion and inclusion errors, as evidenced by the CAG report in findings in the Agricultural Debt Waiver and Debt Relief Scheme 2008. Even the CAG pointed out to these drawbacks, wherein a lot of the beneficiaries do not get included into the scheme's intended benefits. This is the same highlighted where agricultural laborers, marginal farmers do not get included into the benefits of the scheme. And lastly, the schemes have serious implications for other development expenditure, having a much larger multiplier effect in the economy. Now what does this mean? When we say that the credit culture gets disrupted, the states have to deflect their economic resources into absorbing the farm loan waivers. What will this do? Will this not decrease the development expenditure, or that money which was to be spent on increasing the assets or building the infrastructure in the state, it would deflect the money from there, and therefore this has a much larger multiplier effect on the economy, where not just the act of waiving of the farm loan waivers, this creates ripple effect on other aspects of as well, and that is why these are serious drawbacks of the farm loan waiver scheme. All right, then what needs to be done? If this is the scheme that is being carried out, is there something that managerial steps can be taken? So first of all is the proper identification. If we are looking at exclusion and inclusion errors and the intended beneficiaries not being able to get the scheme, so for providing immediate relief to needy, a more inclusive alternative approach is to identify vulnerable farmers based on certain criteria and give an equal amount as financial relief to the vulnerable and distressed families as well. Then enhance the non-farm income. Apart from indulging into the waiving of loans, certain positive steps should also be taken into increasing the income of the farmers and non-farm income especially. So the sustainable solution is to indebtedness and agrarian distress is to raise income from agricultural activities and enhance access to non-farm sources of income such as dairy farming, poultry or horticulture. All these activities, the low scale of farms necessitates some cultivators move from agriculture to non-farm jobs. So this is also important. And then improved technology and expansion of irrigation coverage and crop diversification towards high value crops are appropriate measures for raising productivity and farmers' income, and all these require more public funding and support. So these are some of the way forward measures that we can take in order to rationalize this farm loan waiving scheme, which we can take up as going forward. And what has the RBI observed? As per RBI, loan waivers not only inhibit investment in the farm sector, but pressure on the fiscal of states which undertake farm loan waiver as well. This is what we've been seeing, and even the RBI ratifies to this. In every state election during the last 5 years, loan waiver promise made by one political party or another. Also loan waivers, as the RBI has repeatedly argued, vitiate the credit culture and stresses the budgets of the waiving states and central government. This is what we saw in the drawback part of the loan waiver scheme. So this was the discussion with respect to the farm loan waivers. Let's move on to our next article for the day. The next article, which appears as an image in the newspaper, is about the Nagawali River, wherein we know that the region of Andhra Pradesh and Odisha have been witnessing a lot of rainfall, and the river Godavari has already been flooded. So even the river Nagawali has overflowed, and in this context this river becomes important for us, where already a question on the river has been asked in the prelims of 2020, which a question occurred which asked about rivers Nagawali and other rivers. And what is the question asking? Which of the above rise from the eastern Ghats? So as we can see from here, the rivers which appear in the news and their recent developments, it becomes important for us to look at their important points with respect to the examination point of view. So let's look at the river Nagawali. The river Nagawali, as we can see, this is river Nagawali, which originates in the eastern Ghats near Lakhbahal, located at an altitude of 1300 meters in the Kalahandi district of Indian state of Odisha. So it rises in Odisha, then travels through Odisha into Andhra Pradesh, and then finally drains into Bay of Bengal. Langulya is also another name for the Nagawali River. So what becomes important for us to see is that the eastern Ghats are in the eastern part vertically present in the Odisha and the Andhra Pradesh region, and that is where from which the Nagawali River rises. So coming to the question, can we solve the question? Which of the above rises from the eastern Ghats? So one river Nagawali definitely rises from the eastern Ghats. So we have two options, A and B, wherein Nagawali River exists. Now we are confused between whether Brahmani or Vamsadhara also rises. Now Brahmani is a river which rises in Jharkhand but from the Chota Nagpur plateau, not the eastern Ghats, and that is why not option A and option B becomes the correct answer for this question, right? So this was the discussion for today of the important articles. We'll meet again tomorrow taking up the important articles from tomorrow's newspaper. Thank you.